Today we're going to be working on how to determine the domain of functions by looking at its equation instead of its graph. Now, this one is specifically a Khan Academy that you have this week that many students find difficult. So we're going to go over the Khan Academy in class right now so that you can figure out how to do this. We will be using this all year long and into Algebra 2. So it would be wonderful if we understood it by the end of the day today. So make sure if you have questions, you're asking questions. So the domain, of course, is our x values that we're going to be looking at. So we're going to look at an equation and see which values of x that we can put into that equation to get an answer. And we're avoiding those values of x that if we plug in, we get an error message or can't divide by 0 message. So there's two questions you ask yourself as soon as you see an equation. The first is there a denominator? The second question is there a square root? Now, if both answers are no, there is not a denominator, there is not a square root, then you're done. And your domain is all real numbers. So here we have example 1. We have y equals 22x minus 4. This, of course, is a line with a y-intercept of -4 and a super steep slope of 22. So question number 1, is there a denominator? No. And when we say is there a denominator, we mean is the x in the denominator. Question number 2, is there a square root? Is there a radical? Nope, there is not. Therefore, our domain for example 1 is all real numbers. And this makes sense because we know that a line has an arrow going to the left and to the right. And if we have a line, something continuing left and the right, we can put any value in there for x and get an answer. So example 1, all real numbers. Let's go ahead and move on to example number 2. Here we have f of x is equal to 4 plus 2x divided by 5 minus x. Now, as we're looking at this problem, we're going to answer our two questions. Question number 1, is there a denominator with an x in it? And yes, it is. We don't even need to move on to question number 2. Because question number 1 was a yes, we go ahead and move on and solve. So step number 1, when you do have an x in a denominator, is you're going to simply set the denominator equal to 0. The denominator alone, by itself, no other part of the equation. So here we have 5 minus x equals 0. And then we're going to solve for x. So we're going to go ahead and add x to both sides so we can have a positive value of x, and 5 is equal to x, or x is equal to 5. Step number 2, you are going to make it not equal to. So this is your domain. X is not equal to 5. Now, what that means is that you're going to have a graph that kind of looks like this. And there's going to be one spot at x equals 5 where it is never going to have the line itself touch. So it's going to be empty at that position. Now here's example number 3. Here we have y is equal to the square root of 3x minus 2. Question 1, is there a denominator? No, there's no denominator. So we move on to question number 2. Question number 2, is there a square root? And of course, yes. So if we have yes for a square root, we follow this procedure. Step 1, set blah greater than or equal to 0. What's blah, you ask? It is what's under the square root, not including the square root itself. So 3x minus 2, the blah, is greater than or equal to 0. And then, of course, we're going to solve for x. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides of my equation. We treat that greater than equal sign just like you would treat an equal sign. You're just going to continuously drop it down unless you divide by a negative, which we don't in this case. So we have 3x is greater than or equal to 2. We finish up to isolate our variable by dividing both sides by 3. So x is greater than or equal to 2/3. Step 2, that's it. You're done. This is your domain. X is greater than or equal to 2/3. So once again, you're going to practice this in your Khan Academy. All you have to do is look at your equation and ask those two questions. Number 1, is there a denominator? Number 2, is there a square root? If the answer to both is no, all real numbers. If the answers are yes for either one or the other, you're going to go ahead and follow these procedures.